In the next few minutes, I'm going to expose 10 Scotch whiskies Americans brag about like they're proof of taste and status. But the liquid inside does not justify the price on the tag. These bottles win in boardrooms, airport lounges, and gift bags because the label does the flexing for you, not because the whiskey is delivering something extraordinary. What you're paying for is often packaging, scarcity theater, and reputation momentum that keeps moving even when the quality stays flat. Stick with me until the end, because I'll reveal 5 bottles that actually earn their price without the luxury tax. Number 10. Johnnie Walker Blue Label. Johnnie Walker Blue Label is the ultimate corporate trophy bottle. It's the Scotch that shows up at retirement parties, client dinners, and I made it moments, because the label speaks louder than the liquid. People don't pour it to explore flavor. They pour it to broadcast status, to signal that they belong in the room, and to make sure everyone else notices. Blue Label has become a shorthand for premium, which is exactly why it sells so well in America. The bottle does the bragging for you. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Blue Label is engineered to be universally smooth, universally safe, and universally easy for anyone to approve of, even if they don't actually like Scotch. That smoothness isn't a sign of greatness. It's a strategy. It's a blend designed to remove risk. In theory, blends can be brilliant. A truly great blend can deliver balance and depth that single malts can't always match. But when the price climbs into luxury territory, you need more than smooth. You need personality. You need evolution. You need a finish that actually stays with you. Blue Label leans on polished texture, gentle smoke, and a soft sweetness that reads as premium to casual drinkers. It's pleasing, it's controlled, and that control is the giveaway. The experience feels managed, like it's been sanded down until nothing sharp can challenge anyone. It's the whiskey equivalent of a luxury sedan locked permanently in comfort mode. Quiet cabin, soft suspension, no road noise, no surprises. That might be perfect if you're commuting, but if you're paying luxury money, you shouldn't be buying a commute. You should be buying an experience with depth and character. The other issue is psychological, and it's where most people get trapped. Blue Label trains you to pay for reputation instead of what's in the glass. You're paying for a consistent brand impression that can survive anywhere on earth. Airport, lounges, hotel bars, boardrooms, because it's designed to taste acceptable to everyone. That's not the same as being exceptional. It's just being safe at scale. And here's what makes the price sting. If you want a blend that's actually exciting for the money, you can buy higher proof options with more texture, more intensity, and more real character, and still have cash left over. Blue Label isn't bad. That's the trick. It's good enough to avoid complaint, but not bold enough to justify the luxury markup. It's priced like a miracle while tasting like a carefully managed committee decision. That's not a flex. That's expensive safety. Number 9. Macallan Double Cask 12. Macallan is a masterclass in modern prestige pricing. Americans brag about Macallan because the name has become shorthand for expensive Scotch, and that is exactly the trap. When a brand becomes the default luxury reference, the price can drift away from the liquid, because people keep buying it for the label and the social signal it sends. Double Cask 12 sits in the perfect positioning zone. Approachable enough for new drinkers, polished enough for casual fans, and premium enough to wrap as a gift without thinking too hard. That is not an accident. That is a carefully engineered product slot. Here's what you need to understand about this style of bottle. It is built to be friendly. It is designed to be smooth, sweet, and broadly appealing, which means it avoids the sharper edges that create real tension and complexity. Macallan knows exactly what most people want when they pay Macallan money. No roughness, no surprises, no challenging notes, no moment where a guest makes a face. So, the profile leans into honeyed oak, gentle baking spice, soft fruit, and that signature polished sherry and vanilla impression that reads as luxury, even to someone who can't explain why. It's pleasant, it's clean, it's also predictable. And predictability becomes a value problem when the price climbs. In many markets, Double Cask 12 has drifted into territory where you could buy bottles with more intensity, higher bottling strength, and more honest character. Proof matters because it carries flavor. When a whiskey is bottled at a safe, easy level, it can feel thinner and more controlled. It goes down smoothly, but it doesn't stay with you. The finish is tidy and fast, like a handshake that ends before the conversation gets interesting. If you're paying premium money, you should not be getting a whiskey that disappears. Macallan's modern core range also suffers from another issue. You pay for cask messaging, not necessarily cask excellence. Double cask sounds like a feature, but it can also function as a tool for standardization. By combining cask types, producers can dial the flavor to a consistent target year after year, even as cask quality varies and stock pressures increase. Consistency is a virtue at a fair price. At a premium price, consistency can be a camouflage strategy. Keep the profile safe, keep the experience polished, and quietly let the cost rise because the market will tolerate it. This is why Macallan is so often a brag bottle in America. It's a brand that sells certainty. You know exactly how it will land with a room full of people, even if nobody there actually understands Scotch. The badge does the heavy lifting. If you're buying Double Cask 12 to impress someone, it will probably work, because Macallan's name has been trained into the culture as serious. But if you're buying it to drink, to explore, to get value, you're overpaying for a polite dram that doesn't push back. It's not bad, it's just priced like it's extraordinary. Number 8. Glenfiddich 15 Solera Reserve. This is another American brag bottle because it sounds sophisticated. Solera makes people feel like they're buying a special method, a craft secret, something that separates them from the crowd. It has that wine world glow to it, like the whiskey is being raised with ancient precision in some quietly lit warehouse where only insiders understand the ritual. And Glenfiddich is everywhere, which creates the brag paradox. It's common enough to be instantly recognized, but dressed up enough to feel premium when you say it out loud. The problem is that recognition is not value. It just means the marketing worked. Glenfiddich 15 is built around smoothness and a sweet, rounded profile. It is friendly, it is easy, it is consistent, and those traits are exactly why it sells so well as a safe, step-up bottle. You get soft fruit, gentle spice, a mild oak frame, and a finish that lands clean without any challenging edges. That's not automatically bad, but it's important to understand what you're paying for. You're paying for a controlled experience designed to satisfy the widest possible range of palates. It's engineered to be liked, not to be memorable. This is where the Solera story becomes a trap. The concept is compelling, a vat that holds a portion of older whiskey, with newer whiskey introduced to maintain continuity, creating a consistent house character. That sounds artisanal. It sounds like depth is guaranteed. But in the glass, what you often get is a whiskey whose edges have been smoothed on purpose. The method can add harmony, but harmony can also mean restraint. And when the bottle is typically presented at a bottling strength that keeps everything tame, you feel it. The mouthfeel can come across thinner than many drinkers expect at this price point. The flavors show up politely, shake your hand, and leave. You don't get that weight, that intensity, that lingering finish that makes you pause and think, okay, that was worth it. The deeper issue is pricing. In many American markets, Glenfiddich 15 sits in a zone where you can access more robust options that deliver a stronger sense of place, cask influence, and intensity. This is where buyers should challenge themselves. Am I paying for the liquid, or am I paying for the story? Because the Solera narrative can become a premium surcharge without delivering a premium experience. It's the kind of bottle people describe as smooth, with a proud nod, as if smoothness is the trophy. But smooth is not the goal when you're paying extra. Smooth is the baseline. Smooth is what you get when a brand removes risk. If you want to brag about something meaningful, brag about value and flavor, not a marketing term that sounds artisanal. Glenfiddich 15 is fine Scotch. It tastes good. It pours easy. It works in a group setting. But it is not a strong value at the prices many Americans pay, because what you're buying is accessibility, not intensity. And when you're spending premium money, accessible should not be the headline. Number 7. Dalmore 12. Dalmore is one of the clearest examples of luxury packaging manufacturing luxury expectations. That stag on the bottle is doing real work. The weight of the glass is doing work. The deep colors, the box, the typography, all of it is engineered to communicate prestige before the cork ever comes out. Americans brag about Dalmore because it looks like a premium object, and because the brand language quietly suggests old money refinement. It implies heritage, confidence, and taste without having to explain anything. And that is precisely where the problem begins, because the liquid inside is often less impressive than the presentation surrounding it. Dalmore 12 leans heavily into a rich, dark, dessert-adjacent profile that feels designed to impress immediately. You get orange peel, chocolate tones, coffee-like sweetness, and oak that feels polished rather than alive. On the first sip, it checks boxes. It tastes expensive in the way people expect expensive whiskey to taste. But when you sit with it, the experience can feel strangely pre-assembled. The flavors arrive already arranged, already blended into a predictable shape, and they don't evolve much beyond that initial impression. What you're tasting feels less like a spirit revealing itself and more like a profile that was decided in advance. A large part of this comes down to how the whiskey is constructed. Dalmore relies heavily on cask management to deliver a consistent, recognizable flavor. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but when cask influence becomes the dominant feature, it can mask the shortcomings of the underlying distillate. At this price point, you expect the spirit itself to carry weight, texture, and personality. Too often, Dalmore 12 feels like the casks are doing the talking, while the whiskey underneath stays quiet. It drinks like a carefully curated concept rather than a whiskey that naturally unfolds and surprises you as it opens up. The real giveaway is how people talk about it. Listen closely, and you'll notice that many descriptions mirror the brand's own language. Luxurious, rich, smooth. These are not tasting notes. These are packaging words. They are emotional cues designed to validate the purchase rather than describe the experience. And smoothness, while pleasant, is not a substitute for depth. Smoothness can be achieved by sanding down edges, lowering intensity, and polishing away anything challenging. That makes a whiskey easy to drink, but it does not make it worth a premium price. If you are paying for richness, you should get richness that stays with you. You should get a mouthfeel that feels substantial, a finish that lingers, and flavors that evolve instead of collapsing into sweetness and oak. With Dalmore 12, the finish often fades faster than the presentation suggests it should. The experience ends just as you expect it to deepen. That disconnect between expectation and delivery is what defines poor value. Dalmore 12 is not undrinkable. It's not flawed. It's simply overpriced for what it delivers. It excels at looking impressive on a shelf and sounding impressive when mentioned in conversation. But whiskey is not meant to be consumed with your eyes or your ego. It's meant to be consumed with attention. And when a bottle photographs better than it drinks, when the identity does more work than the liquid, you're no longer paying for quality. You're paying for theater. That is exactly what makes Dalmore 12 not worth the price. Number 6. Balvenie Doublewood 12. This one might upset people because Balvenie has a strong reputation, and Doublewood 12 has become one of the most common gateway bottles into more expensive single malt. Americans brag about it because it signals they've moved past entry-level blends. It feels like a smart, tasteful choice. It says, "I know what I'm doing," without being too niche or intimidating. And here's the hard truth. It used to be a smart value far more often than it is today. Balvenie Doublewood 12 is a good whiskey. That's not the debate. The problem is pricing drift and expectation inflation. Over the years, this bottle has been pushed upward into a price tier where people unconsciously expect more intensity, more texture, and more payoff. But Doublewood 12 has never been built for intensity. It's built for comfort. The profile is gentle, honeyed, woody, softly sherried, and extremely approachable. It's the kind of scotch that rarely offends anyone, which is why it's such an easy recommendation and such an easy gift. But when the price rises, the same gentle profile starts to feel smaller. Not because it got worse, but because the value calculation changed. At today's inflated pricing in many American markets, you can often buy more character, more weight, and more complexity elsewhere. You can find whiskeys with higher bottling strength, bolder cask influence, and a finish that actually hangs around long enough to justify the spend. Doublewood 12 often finishes politely and quickly. It doesn't punch. It doesn't challenge. It doesn't keep unfolding in the glass. And if you're buying it because you think the price guarantees a bigger experience, you'll often feel underwhelmed. This is one of the most common traps in the American Scotch brag ecosystem. A bottle becomes famous for being a solid step up. Then the market starts treating it like a prestige bottle. The label gets elevated socially, and the price climbs faster than the flavor does. People pay extra not because the whiskey suddenly got more profound, but because the bottle gained status as the safe choice for someone who wants to look like a Scotch person. That's when value gets distorted. Balvenie Doublewood 12 is still pleasant. It's still well made. It still does what it was designed to do. Deliver an easy, friendly, crowd-pleasing dram with a touch of sherry warmth. But at inflated prices, it can feel like paying steakhouse money for a very good sandwich. The sandwich is genuinely good. The problem is the bill. Number 5. Oban 14. Oban 14 is a classic, I know Scotch bottle in America. People brag about it because it's not the most obvious name, yet it shows up everywhere that matters. Premium bars, steakhouse back shelves, airport lounges, and the kind of restaurants where the server nods approvingly when you order something respectable. It carries that coastal mystique without being as polarizing as heavier peat. It looks tasteful, it sounds informed, and it's positioned perfectly. Premium enough to impress, familiar enough to reassure. The problem is simple. The experience in the glass can be smaller than the price on the tag. Oban 14 is usually described with the same flattering word, balanced. A little fruit, a little salt, a little smoke, a little malt sweetness. Nothing too aggressive, nothing too weird. That balance is its identity, and for some people, that's exactly the appeal. But balance can quietly turn into bland when the bottling strength is conservative and the profile is kept too tidy. At a safe strength, the whiskey can feel restrained, like it's speaking in a lowered voice, so nobody gets uncomfortable. The mouthfeel can come across lighter than you want. The finish can end before it builds any real momentum. And the smokiness, while present, often feels like a polite background accent, rather than something that creates drama. Here's why this matters in the American market. The price has moved. In many places, Oban 14 has drifted upward into a tier where you expect a bigger experience. Not necessarily more smoke, but more presence, more texture, a longer finish, more evolution from first sip to last. When you're paying premium money, muted is not acceptable. Muted is what you tolerate when a bottle is affordable and dependable. Premium pricing is supposed to buy you intensity, depth, or at least a sense that the whiskey is doing something unique. Too often, Oban 14 is simply being polite. This is another bottle where the reputation does more work than the liquid. When people brag about Oban, they are often bragging about having heard that Oban is good. They're bragging about the idea of Oban, the coastal heritage, the respected name, the implication of refined taste. And yes, if you love this specific style, you can absolutely enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a gentle, balanced whiskey, but enjoyable is not the same as worth the price. At many modern price points, Oban 14 feels like a gentle coastal whisper sold at a price that implies a storm. And that mismatch between what it costs and what it delivers is exactly why it lands on the list. Number 4. Glenlivet 18. Glenlivet 18 is a bottle that Americans use as a maturity signal. It says, "I'm not drinking basic Scotch, I'm drinking something older." Age statements are powerful. They feel like proof. And that is why they can be used to justify prices that aren't always supported by the experience. Glenlivet 18 is smooth, polished, and designed for broad appeal. It leans into soft fruit, gentle spice, and refined oak. It is not aggressive, it is not challenging. It is, in many ways, an upscale crowd pleaser. The problem is that a lot of people expect an 18-year-old Scotch to deliver a deeper mouthfeel, a longer finish, and a more layered evolution across the sip. Too often, this drink's like a well-mannered speech that ends before it says anything memorable. The market price is the bigger issue. When the cost climbs into a range where you can access bolder, higher proof, more transparent bottles, Glenlivet 18 starts to look like a prestige purchase rather than a value purchase. If you want to brag about a whiskey that feels alive. This one often feels like it was designed to never offend anyone, and you are paying for the number on the label more than the energy in the glass. Number 3. Lagavulin 16. This is the peat flex bottle. Americans brag about Lagavulin 16 because it signals toughness and taste at the same time. It says you can handle smoke, and it says you chose something with pedigree, not a random gimmick. It's iconic, it's instantly recognizable, and it has cultural momentum that keeps it in the conversation year after year. The name carries weight, the label carries weight. And here's the problem. The conversation has pushed the price into territory that turns what used to be a near-perfect buy into a questionable purchase. Lagavulin 16 is still a very good peated Scotch. Nobody serious denies that. The peat can be beautiful. Dense smoke, dried seaweed, charred wood, and that signature sweet, dark undertone that makes people fall in love with Islay. But value is not about whether something is good. Value is about what you get for what you pay. And in many markets, the price inflation has been dramatic. As the price rises, your tolerance for compromises drops. At higher prices, drinkers start noticing things they used to forgive. They notice when the bottling strength feels restrained. They notice when the texture feels lighter than expected. They notice when the overall experience feels less commanding than the legend suggests. This is where people need to challenge their assumptions. Smoke is powerful, but smoke is not complexity by itself. Smoke is a volume knob. It can make a whiskey feel intense, even when the structure underneath is playing it safe. A great peated Scotch needs backbone beneath the peat, real malt depth, coastal character that feels alive, evolving sweetness that doesn't collapse into one note, and a finish that lands with purpose instead of fading out politely. When Lagavulin 16 is at its best, it has that structure. But when you are paying premium money, at its best is not enough. You're paying for consistency and impact every time. The brag culture around Lagavulin makes this worse. People talk about it like it's the final boss of smoky whiskey, the ultimate statement bottle, and that myth becomes a price engine. The bottle gains status, the market charges for status, and suddenly you're no longer buying a whiskey. You're buying membership in a story. That story is real, but stories don't belong on your tongue. Whiskey does. Lagavulin 16 can still deliver an excellent experience, especially for drinkers who love that classic Islay profile. The issue is the value calculation. At inflated prices, you are often paying for the legend rather than the liquid. And once you cross into luxury pricing, it starts to feel like a nostalgia tax. You're paying extra to recreate the feeling you had the first time you tried it, or the feeling you've been told you should have. If you want to flex smoke, there are bottles that deliver equal or better dimension for less money. Lagavulin 16 isn't bad. It's just no longer the automatic yes it used to be. Number 2. Macallan Sherry Oak 12. This is one of the most bragged about Scotches in America, and it is a near-perfect example of price theater. The brand has trained people to equate Sherry Oak with premium, and the market has rewarded that with constant price escalation. People buy it to show they understand quality, but the core experience often doesn't justify what Americans are paying today. The flavor profile is attractive: dried fruit, spice, chocolate-like notes, and sweet oak. It's approachable, rich enough to impress, and familiar enough to feel safe. But in many markets, this bottle is priced as if it is delivering extraordinary depth, and too often it delivers a very polished, very controlled version of sherry influence. It can feel like the Scotch equivalent of luxury retail lighting, flattering, curated, and designed to make everything look better than it really is. The bigger issue is what the brand name does to your expectations. When you pay that much, you expect a finish that lingers, a mouthfeel that grips, and layers that keep unfolding. Many drinkers find that the experience is delicious but not transcendent, and the price is asking you to pretend it is. That's not a good deal. That's a status purchase. Number 1. Macallan Double Cask 18. Taking the top spot as the Scotch Americans brag about the most while ignoring the value reality, Macallan Double Cask 18 represents peak price climbed faster than quality dynamics. This is the bottle people mention to prove they're serious. It's the bottle that gets posted. It's the bottle that gets gifted. It's the bottle that turns into a personality trait. And here's the truth. You can pay this kind of money and still end up with a whiskey that feels designed, not daring. The core problem is not that it tastes bad. It's that it tastes safe at a price that implies boldness. It delivers a refined, polished, sweet, and oaky experience that is pleasant and controlled. But the cost often reflects the brand's cultural position more than the liquid's performance. Macallan has become a luxury object. Luxury objects obey different rules than whiskey. Luxury objects can inflate because they're collectible, because they're recognizable, because they're status. Whiskey should inflate because it tastes better. And too often, that link breaks here. At this price, you could buy bottles that are bottled at higher strength, with more transparency, more texture, and more character. You could buy a Scotch that feels alive and unapologetic. What you get here is a beautifully marketed assurance that you bought something premium. If you're bragging about this, you're bragging about having paid the luxury tax. And if your goal is to drink, not to display, that is the worst deal on the list. Now, after exposing the 10 Scotches Americans brag about that do not earn their price, here's the good news. You do not need to stop buying Scotch. You need to stop paying for theater. These 5 bottles actually earn their cost because they deliver intensity, transparency, and real character without hiding behind hype. Number 5. Talisker 10. This is a bottle that behaves like Scotch is supposed to behave. It has coastal character, peppery bite, and a profile that feels energetic rather than polished into submission. It's not trying to be a luxury object. It's trying to be a great whiskey. When you pour it, you get a clear sense of identity. Sea spray, smoke, malt, and spice that stays present through the finish. It earns its place because the flavor is doing the work, not the box. And for the money, it often delivers a stronger sense of place than many more expensive bottles that trade on reputation alone. Number 4. Balvenie 12. This is one of the most consistently good value single malts in many markets, and it wins because it tastes honest. It offers real malt depth, a balanced influence of cask, and a profile that feels full rather than thin. It does not rely on screaming smoke or luxury packaging. It relies on a satisfying mouthfeel and a finish that doesn't vanish. When you drink it, you can tell you're paying for liquid, and in a market full of status bottles, paying for liquid is the entire game. Number 3. Ardbeg 10. If you want peat, this is how you do peat without paying for legend inflation. Ardbeg 10 delivers smoke, yes, but it also delivers structure underneath it. Citrus, brine, malt sweetness, and a long finish that actually feels complete. It's intense, but not one note. It's bold, but not hollow. This is what the Peat Flex bottle should taste like. Not just smoke as a mask, but smoke as a framework for complexity. When people brag about peat, they should brag about something like this, because it performs. Number 2. Glenfiddich 12. If you want sherry influence that feels substantial, this is a smarter direction than many prestige sherry-labeled bottles that have drifted into price theater. Glenfiddich 12 tends to deliver a richer, more satisfying impression of dried fruit, spice, and dark sweetness without the sense that you're paying for a luxury logo. It's not pretending that sherry influence equals virtue. It's simply delivering a robust experience that holds up in the glass. When your sherry-forward scotch actually lingers, actually evolves, and actually feels full, you stop needing a famous name to convince you. Number 1. Glenlivet 14. This is the stop chasing, start sipping bottle. It's the kind of whiskey that serious drinkers respect because it offers texture and character that can't be faked with packaging. There's a waxy, coastal, layered quality that makes the experience feel alive. And the balance is achieved through the whiskey itself, not through loud cask makeup. It's not a bottle that screams for attention, which is exactly why it earns it. If you want a bottle that makes you understand what quality actually means in Scotch, and you want it at a price that still makes sense, this is one of the strongest choices. There you have it. 10 Scotch whiskies Americans brag about that often do not deserve the price they command, and 5 that actually earn your money by delivering real character in the glass. The next time you're standing in the Scotch aisle, remember this rule. If the bottle is selling you a lifestyle, a trophy, or a legend, the price can detach from the liquid without warning. Look for intensity, look for transparency, and look for bottles that don't need a luxury box to justify their existence. If this changed how you see premium Scotch, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which Scotch you want exposed next. And if one of the bottles on today's list is sitting on your shelf right now, don't panic. Just stop treating the label like proof and start treating the liquid like the only thing that matters.